So let's have a quick look then. What does it mean? So if we look at Scrum, how does the Scrum framework work? So you have this one big list, right? This list. And we have already seen that each item it's like a small goal, right? So we have a list of goals. To give you an example, what could be a goal? A goal could be, for example, well, if we are, imagine we are developing an e-commerce, right? It's a website to sell something. And you might say, well, the most important goal is to allow the customers to pay with credit card. That's a goal, right? It's a problem. It's a challenge. And we want you as a Scrum team to provide a solution. Turn that problem into value. And that's this list. This is a wish list, right? So the product backlog is a big wish list. All wishes, right? And we have our dear product owner. The product owner is responsible for keeping to manage this wish list, right? And to keep it in a nice order, right? All right. And we also know that we have our team here. So here we have the developers. And in Scrum specifically, we call developers everybody who gets their hands dirty with the product. So there was one of you guys who said, yeah, I'm a business analyst. And then, okay, so we need someone with business analysis skills. So for example, in the team where I am the product owner, we are working with something called BDD. So we do a lot of specification, right? So I would love to hire someone with specific good specification skills, right? So we need to analyze certain features. We need to put them into the nitty-gritty details, understand, discover the business rules. So this is a skill. This is a really interesting skill. But you will be joining this team, right? If you are a tester, right, you'll be joining as a developer. If you are someone from operations, well, we need you too, right? Because we're working on cloud and we have to deploy our stuff every sprint. So you'll be joining as a developer, right? These are the guys that are able to turn ideas, these goals, into something of value, right? So, and that means really at the end, we have something, right, that should be usable. Okay, it sounds easy again, but now comes the difficult part. We are working in sprints, right? So what are sprints? We're talking cycles of work, right? So if you look at this picture here, we're working in cycles, right? Each cycle, the team has to deliver something of value. And that comes the rub. That cycle is specific, it's constant. So, and it can be any interval up to 1 month. But once you have defined the interval, it stays constant. So in our teams, for example, we are working with 2-week sprints. It's always 2 weeks. And how does it work? Well, in the very beginning, we have this one meeting, right? And what we do in that meeting, we have a discussion. And the product owner, right? So here we have that guy, the product owner. The product owner says, guys, the most important thing is that goal here. We need to be able to deliver on a certain goal, right? So what can we achieve during the 2 weeks? For example, in our case, it's 2 weeks. So they discuss, and then they select items, right? It could be a couple of these, right? They select items into that very small bucket. And then after they commit on these items, they say, okay, we're going to deliver these two. And then they create a plan. They create a small, right, very detailed and focused plan to deliver that in these 2 weeks. So Can you see the challenge? What's the challenge here if you are a developer? Any ideas? Why is that difficult?
It will be difficult to know the duration. Developers need to look at the visibility. If they will be able to complete the sprint within that 2 weeks.
Yes, that's really challenging. To give you an example, imagine the product owner says, oh, what's the most important thing to do? And he says, well, the clients need to be able to pay by credit card. That's the goal for the sprint, right? That's the sprint goal. That's what he says. That's our goal. And then the developers say, yeah, it's we could take this one and that one, but it's way too big. We need 7 weeks for that. So, but Scrum is really strict. Scrum says you have 2 weeks. So what are the approaches? What can we do? Well, so what we have to do then, we need to learn, and this is part of the training, right? So what we as developers do, right? This is part of what we as developers do. We help the product owner to keep the product backlog in a good shape. In good shape. And in good shape, it means that if you look at the top of that backlog, you have these big things, right? And they are just way too big. So you have a conversation with during the work, and you say, oh, could we make this smaller? Could we maybe break it down into smaller pieces, right? So that make it so small that they can actually fit that bucket. And here again, we have the challenge. How do we make things smaller? And the challenge is that we cannot use the divide and conquer approach. You cannot just take an item like this one and say, okay, we're going to cut this into 4 pieces. And that's it. Right? So it's like if you, oh, here we have a, okay, we have a observation, work by prioritization to achieve the sprint. Exactly. Right? So, and I always challenge my students. I ask them, guys, so how do you make a big elephant? How do you split a big elephant? Any ideas? How would you split one? Would you cut the elephant in pieces to deliver the pieces? What do you think? How can you then deliver a big elephant? But the thing is, one approach is you in increments. Yeah, but how? So would you, Ezekiel, would you cut the elephant in like 5 pieces, like each leg, the trunk, and the ears? Would that be an approach for you? I mean, these are increments, aren't they? Somehow they're pieces, but would that help?
No.
No, because the poor animal will die. So the trick is, I mean, it sounds like I'm pulling your leg, right? But the idea is you split an elephant by making a big elephant turn into lots of small elephants. And they should stay alive. But how do you do that? So maybe I mean, if you are a programmer designer, you will understand this, right? So imagine you have an architecture of your product. Imagine your product is, let's see. Right, so usually a product nowadays, right, has a UI part. Yeah, you have this user interface. This is the UI, right? Some HTML pages, some buttons you can click and all that. That's one part of your product. But then you have the other part, which is the actual business logic, right? So where calculations happen, where you have your business rules and all that stuff. And then you have also a persistence layer, right? Your database part and all these things. So one way of cutting the elephant, so to speak, would to say, okay, I know how to do UI stuff, so let's cut it like that. And I know backend, so I'm going to take this part, I'm going to cut it like that. So we could say this would be one piece, this would be piece number 2, and this would piece number 3, right? So we could like take it a product like that. So this is that part. And piece number 2 would be that part. And piece number 3 would be maybe this part. But the thing is, and here comes the problem, if you split it like that, is it valuable? Can you use it? Can you use it? Yes, so it's the slicing. So exactly. So how do we slice these things? And here comes then the technique. And maybe I can get another one here, right? So the slicing, the idea of slicing is actually, if that's your product, right? Vertically slicing means, okay, if these are my technical layers, right? You would say, okay, slicing it could be like that, like kind of a vertical slicing, right? So here we have, for example, we could say, well, if your functionality, the value that you need, the problem, it's like paying by a credit card. You could say, okay, let's make this here first. It could be, for example, paying with credit card, but only MasterCard. So that would be like our very first version. By delivering that, we would have a small first version, but it would be working. And then you say, okay, what would be the next slice? Well, the next slice could be, for example, well, PayPal, right? And we say, okay, and that would be then the next sprint. So we are going to deliver the next piece here. And so forth and so forth. Guys, does that make sense to you? Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does.
All right. The thing is, it means a change in mentality. Because it also means, well, you're not just, you cannot, let's say, okay, why don't we start working in all 3 credit cards at the same time? Because the client needs them anyway, right? But one of the most important parts of the agile thinking is that we want to be able to change, right? So if we imagine we deliver the very first credit card, and then we say, yes, but something more important has come up. So that's okay. Now the client can pay and it's good enough. Let's focus on something more important. And this is the mechanism that allows the product owner to change priority all the time, to always focus on the next most important thing. Okay, so for this to work, maybe to wrap up this, we have another challenge to consider. And one of the challenges is, if we want to be able to deliver value each sprint, we have to make sure that it's actually deliverable. It has to be with good enough quality. And this is why we also have, and this is really a concern for us as developers, we have to be concerned with quality. So this Scrum team, the developers, they are collectively responsible for quality. And it's not a team outside of that team. It's the same team. taking responsibility. So it also means that we need to change our approach to testing, right? So we have to shift the testing thinking towards agile way of thinking, right? So it's not about finding bugs, right? Like looking at many QA teams, right? So that are separated from the actual building team. They have this attitude of like, okay, let's find problems in the product. Let's try to destroy it, right? Let's try to really take it down, right? Find bugs, and then we can send it back to the team. They have to fix this and that. The actual idea of the approach or the thinking of an agile testing approach, first of all, it's the team doing it, not another team. Because if you do something, let's say something bad, who should feel the heat? It's easy of someone outside of the team to find a bug and say, yeah, okay, that's it. So, so the one who has to fix it is not the one who is going to feel the pain just much later. So we want to make sure that people delivering the product take the responsibility. So we have this joint collaborative approach to quality. And that means also that we need new approaches. So we don't want just to find bugs, because that's expensive. We want to prevent bugs as much as possible. And also that means we need new technical approaches.